Welcome into a very special Red Friday edition of the Intangibles brought to you by Arrowhead Addict. My name is Price Carter, and I'm joined by my fellow Intangibro, Christian Amesworth. Christian, how are you today?
Doing good, man. Got the day off of school. We're recording this one a little bit earlier than usual. And thank God for the cold, right?
Yeah, it is wicked cold outside. Reminds me of that Dolphins game that the Chiefs played a year or so ago. Just like if your skin's outside and it's exposed, it hurts. So yes, stay warm on these days for sure. This is why we do it, right? Like this weekend, the AFC Championship game. Two great football teams, the first and second best quarterback in the NFL going head up with a chance to go to the Super Bowl on the line. This is why we do it. This is why we suit up the podcast mics, right? These are the type of games. So I'm really excited to break this game down with you in kind of every way. And, you know, if this is the first episode of the Arrowhead Addict podcast you're listening to, make sure to follow us on iTunes or Spotify or like and subscribe us on YouTube. We're going to be doing a lot of content around the AFC Championship. We've got a show every single day of the week. We will have a pregame show, a halftime show hosted by yours truly, and then hopefully what will be a post-game celebration celebrating a third consecutive Super Bowl appearance. But before we talk about the Chiefs' path to the Super Bowl, let's talk about the other side of the bracket, Christian. Wanted to get your take on Eagles and Commanders. Just what are your kind of 10,000-foot view of these two teams? And if you could pick a team for the Chiefs to play in the Super Bowl, who would it be?
So I've been probably the biggest Commanders supporter that I know about, especially going into these playoffs. I had them upsetting the Lions in the last round, which I know was not a very popular take, but they kind of are on borrowed time here. As much as I'd love to see them beat the Eagles, this seems like a matchup that would completely obliterate them. Like Saquon is going off. He's been the best running back in sports with respect to Derrick Henry, but it just seems like they're almost like the Chargers in a way where it's like, hey, you're not there yet. You maybe need one more draft. You need one more opportunity to get some good players on your team, and then you'll be a real contender. I know that's kind of odd to say about an NFC Championship team, but it just doesn't feel like they're there yet.
Yeah, I think the Commanders are a great example of the fact that the best team doesn't always win in the playoffs, right? I don't think anyone looked at the Commanders and thought that they were a better roster than the Lions. But all it takes is one game. You don't have to be the better team. You just have to be the better team on that night. I thought the game against the Lions was perfectly game scripted for the Commanders. They basically only get stopped on 1 4th down. And I can't even remember if they punted. If so, it was only once. And in that game, they get the Lions starting to chase points. They're starting to put pressure on Jared Goff to make the plays that they have to. And they basically mitigated the Lions run game via game script. And that's an argument for some people who are pretty anti-running backs. Like that's an argument that like Jahmyr Gibbs, fantastic player, David Montgomery coming back from injury, wasn't quite healthy in that game. But that this game basically nullified Jahmyr Gibbs just because they didn't have time to run the ball. I was looking at some of the success rate and EPA per rush. The Lions were the most effective ground game in the NFL last week during the division round, and it didn't matter, right? So I do think, to go back to what you're saying, they might be living on borrowed time. However, I will say, if there's a way that this game could get weird, it'd be a divisional matchup, right? A team that's seeing each other for a third time. These teams know each other well. And yeah, the Commanders are playing way over their talent level. You've got Jaden Daniels, which... man, he is just so fun to watch. Thank God he's in the NFC. Like, doesn't it feel like every good quarterback in the last 5 years has went to the AFC? Finally, there's one over in the NFC. But he is just so cool and calm. I did not see this coming from him. I honestly thought the Commanders were making a mistake by not taking Drake May. But his ability to throw over the middle of the field has just really improved. We knew he could throw the ball down the field. And then he is just so slick as a runner and a cool and calm character. Have you read about what Jaden Daniels does to help him achieve at this level? Have you been reading what he's been doing?
No.
I guess he's one of the first quarterbacks to really start utilizing VR. And the VR system that he's using, it's very complex. It can dial up specific plays and schemes and things like that. And you can change the speed. So he's scrubbing us like a podcast. 1.75 speed is what he practices on. So yeah, he's taken the donut off the bat. Everything is slower for him when he's playing the game. And doesn't it look like that? How in control he is of the game. It's really cool. I think that could be like the next wave of things. Like my dad's a huge NASCAR guy, and at first they used to make fun of some of the NASCAR drivers who were practicing the tracks on the Xbox. Now they have these really complex iRacing simulators, and now it's like the standard, right? Michael Jordan, he used to come into training camp and get into shape during training camp for the NBA season. Then one season when they were going for the Three-Peat, shout out Three-Peats, he comes into training camp in shape, and everyone goes, oh shit, we got to start coming into training camp in shape, right? So that way they hit the ground running. So I think this might be the next wave here. Who do you think's the better matchups for the Chiefs if they are to make it? Is it the Eagles? Are they just on this 49er Eagles pattern here, or are we going to get like to, a really exciting quarterback matchup with Jane Daniels and Patrick Mahomes?
It's tough, right? Because I think that the Chiefs could probably do well in at least mitigating Saquon Barkley's impact. But I think you look at the rest of the roster, it's like, who would you rather have Trent McDuffie cover? Is it A.J. Brown, who's a really tall, really athletic, deep field, down the field threat? Or is it Terry McLaurin, who's a little bit smaller, a little bit shiftier, great route runner? You look at the rest of the matchups on the team, and it's like, man, I sure as hell would rather play the Commanders and a rookie quarterback in the Super Bowl rather than Jalen Hurts, who's a certified warrior. And it doesn't seem to matter how well he plays in the playoffs. As soon as he gets to the Super Bowl, he's playing fantastic. I mean,
yeah. I mean, like, I think both teams. Honestly, these teams are pretty similar in a lot of ways, right? The running quarterback, both teams are really willing to go for it on fourth down and are almost automatic at it because of the tush push. And Jane Daniels is just like a hack with that and the triple option and everything that they have there. I mean, it's definitely the Commanders, right? Like the Commanders' offensive line is made up out of guys the Chiefs didn't sign. Nick Allegretti, Andrew Wiley, who are both playing really good. Sam Cosmi, the really good right guard, tore his ACL. He's going to be out for this game. It's an uphill battle for the Commanders to win it. But if there's someone who could, it's him. And I mean, my God, man, they've got like Jane Daniels has me looking up Diami Brown's over the cap contract situation. I was like, hey, like, could this guy be on the Chiefs? This guy looks pretty good. And I mean, Olamide, Zacchaeus, Brian Robinson, 33-year-old Austin Eckler, like they're cooking with these guys. This is going to be the team of the offseason. I have no doubt. They are going to, whether it be a Tyreek Hill or a Deebo Samuel or T. Higgins, they are going to be movers and shakers this offseason because they've got the guy and they've got the cap space. So shout out to Ben Johnson, who turned down that gig. That's aging like milk, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. Well, and good for them, too. Like, if there were a couple of teams that I really wanted to see succeed, it's like the Commanders, the Lions, maybe not so much the Browns because of that Sean Watson contract, but it's like, dude, we were there at one point. A lot of Chiefs fans forget, like, seeing those other teams rise up, you're like, good job, buddy. We're almost there. Make no doubt about it. If it is Chiefs Commanders, everyone's going to be a commie during the Super Bowl. Yes. No one's going to want to see the Chiefs win over the Commanders, even though the Commanders historically were a franchise that did pretty well in the 90s. No one's going to want to see them. They're going to want to see the rookie quarterback win a Super Bowl. Totally understand that. Maybe Chiefs Eagles is the better outcome then, because like a lot of people hate the Eagles. They've just been there. They've won one not that long ago. Just, everyone just get pissed off because both teams are there. I've already heard a lot of people complaining about like Chiefs Eagles again. So who knows? But the Chiefs got to get there first, and that's not going to be easy. But you know what is easy? Winning on Underdog, Christian. That's what they call in the industry a spot-on transition. There's only 3 football games left in the year. Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money not just on football, but all sports. With over 5 million happy players and $2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all of your favorite athletes' performances. Compete against other players just by selecting higher or lower on 2 players' stats, and you could win up to 100 times. No, not 100, 1,000 times up your money. So turn down every touchdown into a win with Underdog. Download the app today. Use our code Arrowhead Addict. That's all one word to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, that's code Arrowhead Addict, all one word, to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Every player, every score. Just select higher or lower on Underdog.
Must be 18 years or older and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Term and apply. Vote in Colorado. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit www.mpcgambling. Arizona, call the 1-800-TEXT. Text next step to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 helpline at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. Text helpline 467-369. No Sterling Holmes, but it was all right. As I started talking faster, I just started getting like I just felt like I was just constantly shushing. Okay, so before we get to game preview, I want to bring this up. Someone very astutely pointed this out. We were just referencing Michael Jordan, The Last Dance. I think Michael Jordan still might be the better comparison for Patrick Mahomes' career ultimately than Tom Brady, partially because Michael Jordan didn't win the most rings in the NBA, right? Like I forget what the other guy's name was, like Bill Walton or something.
You're talking about Bill Russell?
Bill Russell. Yeah, sorry. Not a big NBA guy. But he's won the most rings, right? But Michael Jordan's widely considered the GOAT, right? And 6 rings for Michael Jordan. It's a little bit more achievable for Patrick Mahomes. The Joe Ross on Twitter or X pointed this out. Patrick Mahomes, he always kind of puts out these big like highlight videos before big games, the start of the playoffs, made an Instagram video, and the video features the song Right Here by Right Now by Fatboy Slim, which is also like could be the nickname for our podcast, Fatboy and Slim. But the song is called Right Here, Right Now, and it's used in episode 10 of The Last Dance, where the Bulls go for the three-peat. As the song begins to play, 3 to go, it's shown on the whiteboard in the Bills locker room, or in the Bulls locker room, sorry, one letter away. So basically, the song's been taken from The Last Dance. And that kind of had me thinking, could this be the last dance for this iteration of the Chiefs? We've alluded to this a little bit. The stakes are really high here, right? I think they might be higher than some of us realize. And if the Chiefs lose to what is a very good Buffalo Bills team in Arrowhead this Sunday, I think this could be the last ride for a lot of players and could be the last version of this roster that we see. Let me read you a list of free agents who are not on the contract, not under contract next year for the Chiefs, and you tell me what you think of this. DeAndre Hopkins, Marquise Brown, Trey Smith, Justin Watson, Kareem Hunt, Samaje Perine, Tershawn Wharton, Charles Omenihu, Joshua Uche, Derek Nottie, Nick Bolton, Justin Reed, McCole Hardman, Juju Smith-Schuster, DJ Humphries. The Chiefs' projected cap space is $22.7 million for next season. Is this the last dance?
Yeah, I think for a lot of people it is. I think that when you look at DeAndre Hopkins, especially how he's looked in the playoffs with the utilization, the lowest snap counts of the season, like you kind of look at that and you go, okay, is part of that part of the game plan, or is part of that because they don't really feel like they can utilize him as he can best be utilized? He's probably gone. I hate to say it, but Trey Smith probably also. Justin Reed, I would imagine as well. Nick Bolton seems like he's not going to be here. All those other guys are kind of expendable, though, right? Like finding an effective running back in the draft seems easier than ever. Like
I don't know, man. Tershawn Wharton, Charles Omenihu. Those are some.
Yeah, those are 2 other guys that
are big
could
names.
do very, very well. Josh Uche, big playoff guy there.
Not so much for him. That let's not dig up the receipts on the Joshua Uche trade. I can never give back the dopamine that trade gave me, though. So suck it, haters.
That's true.
But here's the thing that I keep coming back to. Don't forget Travis Kelce, right? Like the way he looks and stuff, we're pretty encouraged that, hey, maybe there is another season here. I would say it's probably more likely that he were to hang it up if the Chiefs do complete their ultimate goal here. But I don't know. Like, I think that people are really underestimating just how different this roster could look next year. And the Chiefs, I feel this season, have made quite a few moves that they may not have made in years past to try to get over this. DeAndre Hopkins is not their type of receiver. Because of injuries, they made that move. And I think that kind of illustrated that. Kareem Hunt, certainly, none of us saw the team bringing him back. And yet he's basically the starting running back for this team now. I just think that this has kind of been an all-in version of the Chiefs this year. And I mean, they're kind of always all in. You can always say, like, as long as Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are here, they should be the Super Bowl contender. But to me, I think that it's no coincidence that everything is put on this three-peat. And I think the burden is heavy. I think there were some moments in the game against the Texans that felt a little bit tight. And hopefully that tightness is relaxed in this next game now that they're not rusty. But yeah, I think there's some pretty high stakes in this game as far as what the future of this team looks like.
Yeah, and just to play devil's advocate here, because I do think a lot of these guys are going to be gone. I agree with you. But if you look at the cap for 2026, and that's where you really start to see some of these things open up, 77 million projected cap space in 2026. Now, how we structure these contracts, how everything gets slotted into the salary cap, it can be manipulated. But I think you probably pick out two of the names that are on this list and you go, okay, we can add those guys and maybe three. And that depends on how you feel about the Juwan Taylor contract, who we're going to talk about in just a little bit, having a great game in the playoffs as he's wanted to do. But I just don't know. All of these guys are not coming back. You know that for a fact. Is it important that Trey Smith comes back as an interior offensive lineman? He's fantastic, yes. But it's like, does he have that impact? We don't know. Marquise Brown, like, big question mark. How effective can he be in the offense? Justin Reed, probably not. You probably haven't seen as much from him as you'd like to from the contract that you gave him. Nick Bolton, the same thing. I mean, fantastic player. Is an off-ball linebacker that important in today's NFL? Like, maybe, but probably not as much as it once was. Like, if you had to pick out two or three names to come back that are realistic, like, obviously, don't say Trey Smith, Charles Omenihu, and Nick Bolton. Had to pick three. Who are your three that are coming back?
To me, I know this sounds going to sound really ridiculous. Charles Omenihu and DJ Humphries. There's a lot of really important names on this, like Trey Smith, like Nick Bolton, like Justin Reed. That's a lot of defensive snaps. To me, when Charles Omenihu is on the field, the Chiefs pass rush is different. It just levels up every player on that defensive line. I don't know that I've seen enough from, even though Felix Anudike-Uzomah had a very impactful 6 snaps, I'm not sure that I've seen enough from him to say, like, hey, this is a guy who I want to take the bulk of the snaps. Mike Dana is here, but Mike Dana is kind of a ditch digger, whereas, you're not centering your pass rush around him. Charles Omenihu makes plays. And then I've tweeted this out, and we don't want to burn off-season content here, right? Like, we got a lot of podcasting to go before the Chiefs suit up again in August. But I would put money on the left tackle of the Chiefs next year being DJ Humphries, Alaric Jackson, a free agent left tackle for the Rams, the left tackle Ronnie Stanley from the Ravens, Jedrick Wills, who has been an often injured left tackle for the Browns, or someone else. I don't see the Chiefs, or DJ Humphries. Like, that's why I said DJ Humphries, because I just don't see a guy in this class at all who's going to move me. Every time we do a mock draft, someone goes, no tackle? It's like, guys, this is not a grocery list, okay? You just don't walk in and grab eggs, milk, and cheese and call it good, okay? Just because you get one doesn't mean you got a starter. See Kingsley Suamataia, right? This is not the class. I think there's probably 2 guys that I think could actually be tackles, Joshua Simmons and Josh Connerly, Oregon and Ohio State for those teams. By the way, Josh Simmons played like 8 games this year. He's as raw as Amarius Mims and has about as much tape as Amarius Mims have. Connerly's doing pretty well. But honestly, man, like, I don't see why those guys would ever be on the board for the Chiefs. And then you're getting into guys that are Suamataia level prospects. You sign Ronnie Stanley, like, maybe they break the bank. So there we go. I said it. Yay. On Ronnie Stanley, and that's your left tackle. By the way, Ronnie Stanley has had a extensive injury history and has miraculously stayed healthy this year, played really well. And if you get that version of him, that's an incredible signing, and that could be huge. But he's also older. Like, this would be kind of like the Trent Williams deal, where you're bringing in a guy on the back part of his career and the tackles can play longer. So, yeah, DJ Humphries is a guy I could see them bringing back. He's in the system, another year to get healthy, and then you do kind of the Orlando Brown thing, where you've got a 2 or 3 year answer at left tackle and buy you more time. It's unfortunate. It sucks, but this is just not a question that's going to be easy to answer.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know about DJ Humphries coming back. I don't know how good he's actually been since he's been here, but that is definitely an option for this team that would be very low cost at a very high value position, and the upside is there. If I were to pick 3, Charles Omenihu is definitely on my list. I would probably say Trey Smith as well if we have to, and then maybe Juju to round out this wide receiver core, like where we've got somebody who can come in.
Hollywood, or I think that they will have to make a move at wide receiver this year with the Rashee Rice injury, especially when you've got your guys like Justin Watson and Juju Smith-Schuster, whether it is just bringing one of them back who play enough snaps that it matters. DeAndre Hopkins just isn't really the fit. I could see Hollywood Brown wanting to come back. There'll be some other names. Like I think Chris Godwin's probably going to hit the market. He's a guy that has a profile that the Chiefs like. Yeah, but he's also coming back from a significant injury, so maybe they buy low there. But I do think that they'll probably have to have another body there, just given that you can't count on anything from Sky Moore anymore. And you've liked what you've seen from Xavier Worthy. And when are we going to see Rashee Rice? Thanksgiving, maybe post suspension. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how all this plays out. And I think kind of going back to the Last Dance analogy with the Bulls, they had their big three, right? You had Pippen, Rodman, and Jordan, the Chiefs' big three. You've got Patrick Mahomes, who's getting ready to turn 30. Travis Kelce, who might be in his last season. Chris Jones is, getting closer and closer to that threshold of age. So this roster is going to look different. There's a kid right now playing high school football, doing 7-on-7, who's going to catch playoff touchdowns from Patrick Mahomes. And we don't even know this kid's name. And that's why I think it's really important that they continue to invest in skill players, because we see in this playoff game, the Chiefs completely rely on Travis Kelce to win a playoff game at age 35. How much longer is that possible? I don't know. Right now, I'm feeling pretty good about it. But in the regular season, I felt a little bit different. Maybe they just kind of keep running this back until he can't, until the wheels fall off, as he says. But who knows? He's also like on game shows and TV shows. So it will be a new age, a new era of Chiefs football. And we just got to kind of embrace it. I think we saw enough from Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy that if those guys are both on the field and healthy, that's a great start to an offense. They've got the best center in football right now, and that's kind of your foundation. And then they've got some really exciting young defenders. I would certainly think Trent McDuffie is going to be due up for an extension here soon. But there's a lot of questions to be answered. So Last Dance or not, those questions are going to come. And let's just hope that these questions are able to be answered in late February rather than next weekend.
Yeah, I agree. And one more thing, I know this is kind of off topic, but George Karlaftis, his performance in the last game had I saw a lot of people tweeting he's going to get the bag this offseason. Do you think that like validates that with how well he's played? Again, very off topic from what we're talking about, but if we're going to mention Carl's name, we at least got to praise him a little bit for that performance.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are going to look good where it's, I'll have to pump up here, but he's either had double-digit sacks every year or close to it. Performed well in the playoffs. Now that's kind of a chicken or egg situation there where it's like, well, he's in a lot of playoff games because of other factors, not just him. He's got that first round pedigree. Yeah. 24 and a half sacks by year go 6, 10 and a half, 8. So I was a little rich, but he plays a ton of snaps. To me, like, look at the contract that Carl Granderson got from the Saints. Also Trey Hendrickson's first contract. That's a great comparison where it's a guy who like they chose not to pay because of the Saints perpetual cap situation. Another team scoots him up and he kind of blossoms into this pass rusher. Now, Karlaftis has played a lot of snaps since he's come here. So it's not quite the Trey Hendrickson thing where he was buried with some other great pass rushers like Cam Jordan. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think that there's a situation where the Chiefs aren't going to be able to pay both Karlaftis and Trent McDuffie. Don't forget Leo Chanel in there, who, just seems to come up in huge plays, and Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams. All those guys are going to kind of come due at the same time. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Chiefs pay McDuffie, tag Karlaftis, but that edge number is going to be pretty high for Karlaftis. And keep in mind, they mix in the off-ball linebackers too. That's something that's weird with the franchise tag. Is like if the Chiefs wanted to tag Nick Bolton, it's going to be a high number because on-ball linebackers like TJ Watt are going to be factored into that. So that's a huge number. Same with Karlaftis, right? So kind of I'm not sure. I'll have to look into that. I can't remember if edge is different, if like defensive line or interior defensive line. We'll have to look into that. But all right, let's get to the bread and gravy here, the meat and gravy, the meat and potatoes. Let's get to this AFC Championship game preview. Two great teams, two great quarterbacks. This is why we do it. This is something to be excited about. Real quick, Christian, let's just kind of take a quick look at what we saw from Ravens Bills in that game. As we were watching that game, we were all rooting for like 3 or 4 overtimes. What did you come away thinking from what the Bills did and their win over the Ravens?
My biggest takeaway wasn't necessarily what the Bills did. It was more about what the Ravens did and still lost. It wasn't and I'm not just talking about that missed catch by Mark Andrews or the fumble by Mark Andrews. It's like, man, Lamar played probably the worst half of playoff football he's played so far. Like an interception, a really bad fumble, and then he comes out in the second half. There's another fumble. They lose the ball 3 separate times, the Ravens do, and they're still a 2-point conversion away from winning the game. Now, part of that's the Derrick Henry effect, right? Like, he got downhill, especially late in the game, and if you don't see those mistakes, I think we're playing a different team. But it's also like, hey, look, I understand it's the Bills, it's Josh Allen. That 2-point conversion, if they made it, wasn't necessarily going to be like the end of the game. It'd have been Josh Allen with like 1 minute and 30 seconds left and 2 timeouts. It's like, it's probably going to be the Bills anyway. But it's like, I didn't think the Ravens were the better team going in. I think that they maybe had a better roster. I didn't think they were the better team. And if you let the Ravens hang around, and even after 3 turnovers, I think the Chiefs have a pretty good shot. I'm feeling much better about the matchup here, even though the Bills always play us close. I'm feeling much better about this matchup than, 5 or 6 days ago when we're leading up to this game and looking at the roster and looking at how well Josh Allen played. I mean, like if you just look at Josh Allen's stats, 0 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 170-something yards passing. If the Chiefs hold Josh Allen to that, which I'm not saying they will, it's a blowout. I don't think that it's even close.
See, you are much more optimistic than I am. And we'll get to the breakdown of the game here for a second. But one point that you brought up here that I think is honestly quite a parallel to what the Eagles have done. The Eagles have Jalen Hurts proofed their offense. Jalen Hurts is still not a great drop back passer. In fact, I don't know if you saw this. Nate Tice tweeted this out in the wild card round. Jalen Hurts took his first snap under center, pure drop back with no play action of his career. So he's under center, does a 5-step drop and throws a pass. No play action. That was the first time of his career he had done that in the NFL. That's crazy. I think that what the Bills have done is really smart. We know that Josh Allen loves to put on the superhero cape and can from time to time. When you look at the Bills and their shortcomings over the last few years, the games that they've lost in the regular season, some of the things that have happened to them in the postseason, oftentimes it's because they asked Josh Allen to put on that cape too much, make crazy plays down the field, make crazy plays with his legs. And Josh Allen just has a little bit of that golden retriever in him where it's just like, if you let him off the leash, he's going to run, right? And we saw the devil speaking to Josh Allen a couple of times in this game. There was that play where he was wrapped up at the goal line of QB power and he was thinking about tossing it to the running back, but he was physically being restrained. And honestly, that might have been the best outcome because that could have turned into a fumble or, missed him or whatever. That's the old Josh Allen. But the Bills, they've built this really varied, elaborate run game with great running backs. They have one of the best offensive lines in football. They have a good enough defense, and they just have enough receivers that can do what they need to do. They've got Mac Hollins, who's a big physical guy, great run blocker, pretty good down the field, one of the best slot receivers in the game, and Khalil Shakir, 2 great tight ends. I mean, they've built this game around being able to run the football and play action off that, and it's working. You look at those stats and say, oh, if the Chiefs hold Josh Allen to this, I really like the outcome for them. I look at those stats and say it's completely possible for them to win a game like that now. A couple of years ago, you're right. Like, there's no way the Bills would be able to win if Josh Allen doesn't put on the cape. But between that, the success they've had in the run game, and oh, by the way, they now run the tush push just as good or better than the Eagles, and they run QB power, which, by the way, we just watched the national championship game. That's like the most unstoppable play in football right now. Because when that quarterback drops back to pass the ball, you have to respect that. It puts the backers in conflict. And then, oh, by the way, I can just run into the offensive line at full speed. So this is what makes this game really hard, is that both of these teams, by the way, in the last 8 games, the Bills have turned the ball over once, only to be bettered by the Kansas City Chiefs, who have not turned the ball over a single time in the last 8 games, including the playoffs. The team that turns the ball over is going to lose. And we saw that in the Ravens game. You could honestly come away from looking at the stats and some of the plays in that game and say Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson had the better game. But they turned the ball over, and that's why that's not true. And the way that these teams possess the ball and convert on 3rd and 4th down, I mean, man, we could be looking at a game here where the teams touch the ball 5-6 times in a half or less, right? Like, this is one of those games that if you're punting more than once, you might lose this game. And it's not because the defenses are bad. In fact, the defenses in this game are very good. It's just impossible to stop these quarterbacks when they're operating at this level.
Well, and that's the thing. You said that they have like a Jalen Hurts proof-esque offense, right, with Josh Allen. Here's the thing. They did win that game. The only reason that they won, truly, I believe, is because the Ravens had 3 turnovers and the Bills had 0. And Patrick Mahomes is not going to make those same mistakes. Now, I think there's a lot that has to change with the offense before Buffalo comes to Kansas City. But part of me looks at that and goes, okay, Josh Allen isn't, he's a much better distributor. He's still got that like Brett Favre wild man gunslinger in him. And Patrick Mahomes, it looks like, doesn't necessarily anymore. He's really like suppressed that aspect of his playing personality, if you can call it that. But it's like, man, I just can't see a world where the Chiefs turn it over 3 or 4 times. I guess I can, because it was the Cincinnati game a few years ago in the AFC Championship game, where Patrick Mahomes has an awful day. There's a bunch of drops. It's not the best performance, and then the Bengals win, and it's still kind of close. That could happen tomorrow or whenever this game is being played on Sunday. It's like, but that just doesn't seem like a likely scenario, if you know what I mean.
Well, yeah. And I mean, you can look at the turnovers one of two ways, right? You can look at them and say, these teams don't turn the ball over, so it's not going to happen. And if one team does, it's going to be a backbreaker. Or you can look at it and say, neither one of these teams have turned the ball over in a long time, so it's bound to happen, right? Mm-hmm. The Chiefs have gotten some good luck. We saw that twice now in the most recent games that the Chiefs starters have played. Nico Remigio has put the ball on the ground, and it's just bounced right back to a Chief. Maybe that doesn't happen. That could, I mean, like, it sucks. But when you're talking about these type of teams and these type of players, that could be the difference, right? Is Nico Remigio puts the ball on the ground in a kick return, punt return, and there's the game. I mean, that opened up the Super Bowl for the Chiefs last year, is a muffed punt. So let's get into the meat and potatoes here a little bit. When the Bills have the ball, so when the Chiefs are on defense and the Bills are on offense, here are some notes that I kind of ran over the Bills offense as I was watching it this morning. One of the big things that you're going to hear, you'll hear Tony Romo talk about it, is the 6 offensive linemen. The Bills are using 6 offensive linemen at one of the highest rates in the NFL. They're doing this by putting basically an extra guard in, but they line him up like a tight end. So instead of having another tight end in the game who's not going to be as good of a blocker, they put in Alec Anderson, who is a swing guard tackle. He's number 70. Something that's interesting about this too, in the divisional matchup against the Chiefs last year, the Bills used 6 offensive linemen a heavy amount of times. Every single time they did that, but once they ran the ball, and the Chiefs picked up on that. Think about it. In the NFL, if you could have the advantage of knowing if it's a run or a pass, that's a huge advantage for how you're going to play the game, especially for those linebackers and corners coming downhill. So the Bills, they've become much more varied with the 6 offensive linemen look. They ran it 4 times against the Chiefs in November when they faced. They passed the ball twice, including a big completion to Dawson Knox down the field with Leo Chenal covering him. Ding, ding, ding. That's what they want. They want you to get in base defense. The Chiefs are going to match that 6 offensive linemen with their base defense and some of their bigger bodies. So you got Mike Pinnell, Mike Dana on the field rather than some of your better pass rushers. And you've got Leo Chenal covering Dawson Knox, which, by the way, Dalton Kincaid didn't play last time the Chiefs played the Bills. That's a big matchup there too. So the Chiefs are going to have to find a way to counter this. They passed out of it twice and they ran out of it twice. I suspect the Bills will continue to do this. They did it 11 times against the Ravens. Twice they passed out of it. So 8 times they ran, twice they passed. Something else to keep in mind too, this Ravens team, they held Josh Allen down, and the Ravens are a really good run team, run defense. They allowed the fewest rushing yards per game and the second lowest EPA per carry in the league. So this is a team that came in stopping the run well, and they still weren't able to do a whole lot. This is a great offensive line of the Bills, and the Chiefs, they're not getting 8 sacks. I feel pretty confident saying the 8 sacks is just not going to happen, let alone for the offensive line, and then just how hard it is to bring Josh Allen down.
Yeah, I agree. And really, when you're looking at this team, and if you were like, let's say we're the defensive coordinators for the Kansas City Chiefs, first thing that you look at is, do we have the personnel to be able to have 4 guys on the defensive line that can help us stop the run? Chris Jones, as much as people love to say it, they love to say that he's awful against rushing. He's a bad run defender. Well, sometimes. Right? Whenever he's in that pass rush first mode, it's like, yeah, he's not necessarily the best, but when he really buckles down, he can absolutely be a guy that is an asset in the run game. Tershawn Wharton, maybe not as much. He's probably going to see a reduction of snaps. If you're looking at Mike Dana, probably going to see some more snaps. Same thing with FAU. He's going to see some more snaps. George Karlaftis always plays a lot. But I feel pretty confident in like our interior defensive line and some of those guys on the edge to be able to help with that. Now, are they the same as the Ravens? Definitely not. I don't think that they have that type of ceiling to them, but I think this is something that is feasible for the defensive line. The problem is when you get into these linebackers and you look at Nick Bolton and say, hey, listen, Nick, you're a very up and down player. If you're attacking downhill, you're fantastic. Let's attack downhill. If they get him out in pass coverage, it's going to be a problem. And when they have Dalton Kincaid, when they have, what's the other guy's name? Dawson Knox.
Yes.
Who are these guys that are kind of those hybrid run blocking, Kincaid less so, but like a hybrid run blocking tight end, pass catching tight end. It makes it really, really difficult on those guys. So what this defense really might come down to, this matchup on this side of the ball, it might very well come down to, hey, can your outside linebackers, can your off-ball linebackers, can they protect? Can they go out in coverage? And if you're Drew Tranquil, I am very confident. If you're Leo Chanel, maybe less so. So just something to watch when you're watching that game is how the offense or how the outside linebackers are doing. Are they, or if they're dropping a defensive end back in coverage as well. And it's like, hey, is George Karlaftis covering Dalton Kincaid more than 3 times a game? We're probably getting abused. That's going to be probably the key to the defense.
Well, they've got to maintain the rush lane integrity, right? Gap integrity is huge in this game. That 4th and 2 conversion that Josh Allen basically put the game away in Buffalo this year, you see Chris Jones get upfield. This is not the game to sack hunt. And not that I'm accusing them of doing that. I think they're trying their best, obviously, but this is the game that integrity, it matters so much. We expect the Chiefs to spy Josh Allen. The question is, who's the best person to do that? Because if you put Nick Bolton on him, I saw CJ Stroud outrun Nick Bolton last week. Love you, Nick Bolton. Thank you for your service. But I'm not sure that he's the best person for that. Do you put someone like Jaden Hicks? Leo Chanel might not be a great matchup, but Jaden Hicks, he lays the thump. He's pretty athletic. Is that someone you would consider using as a spy? But what are the responsibilities there, right? Like that's a different role. We've even seen teams put double spies on Patrick Mahomes this season on 3rd downs when they're wanting to contain him in the pocket. Look, we're beyond the analysis of if you want to beat Josh Allen, you want to keep Patrick Mahomes, keep him in the pocket. That's dummy stuff. Both these quarterbacks can win from the pocket. But I do think that if you are keeping Josh Allen in the pocket, you limit the ways he can win. So a spy is definitely something they're going to have to do. And we alluded to it earlier. They run the tush push effectively as good as the Eagles. They've perfected it. So if it is 3rd and 2, it's over. They're getting it. Okay? They just are. Unless they drop back to pass on 3rd and 2 and get sacked or something like that, or a turnover, because they can get it on 4th down. So essentially, you're now facing an offense where you have to win on 1st and 2nd down because they have the run game to be able to convert this. And you better believe that they are going to put all their chips on the table. The Chiefs are their boogeyman, and they have all the demons they want to exercise. They have come into Arrowhead and won before. They just haven't done it in the playoffs. They won that 13 seconds game before their coach gave it away. And he absolutely did. And honestly, that's one of the biggest advantages in this game. Like if we're talking about paths for the Chiefs to have a victory, one of them's going to be a Sean McDermott blunder, doing the Make-A-Wish kid, Damar Hamlin fake punt, something like that. A special teams gaffe, like we've obviously seen that from the Bills too. Like the margins here are tight. So it's going to take something like that for the Chiefs to have an advantage here. Let's talk about when they're passing the ball. So against the Ravens, real quick, Josh Allen, just proof of how great the success rate is for the Bills. 50% success rate rushing the ball against Denver, the number one defense in the NFL, 55.6 against Baltimore. So basically every time they are running the ball, over 50% of the time it's a successful run, which means if it's first down and 10 and they get 6 yards, that's successful. If it's 3rd and 2 and they get 3 yards, that's a successful run. The good old 3rd and 16 draw that teams play, that's not a successful run, by the way, if they get 7 there, just to explain that stat. But Josh Allen's average depth of target. So how deep was he throwing the ball down the field against the Ravens? 6.2 yards per an attempt, one of the lowest of his career and one of the lowest of his season. Josh Allen's a guy who loves to push the ball downfield, and they won a game without doing that. I think that just kind of speaks to, again, they're kind of idiot-proofing the offense, not to call Josh Allen an idiot because he's not. But I do think that says something. The last matchup that the Chiefs faced the Bills, Khalil Shakir abused Shamari Connor. Shamari Connor against the Bills was 5 for 6 for 63 yards when targeted. Did have an interception in this game, but we kind of asked the question, what are the Chiefs going to do in the slot? Shamari Connor took 38 snaps in the slot last week against the Texans. So the question still remains, how are the Chiefs going to be able to control Khalil Shakir in this game?
See, and I think we're going to see a lot of Trent McDuffie on the inside.
I hope so. To me,
yeah.
You put Trent McDuffie on Khalil Shakir, and then you say, we'll take our shots with Amari Cooper, Keon Coleman, and Matt Collins trying to beat us on the outside against Watson and Williams. To that point, Najee Johnson took 100% of the snaps against the Bills in Week 11. No Jalen Watson, who was obviously injured, and Joshua Williams did not play a defensive snap. I feel like that if there is a spot that we're talking about this game looking different than last time, that has to be it. The emergence of Jaden Hicks, you stick Trent McDuffie on Khalil Shakir, say best on best, you're not beating us out of the slot, and we'll take our shots with those guys.
Yeah, and to that point, Najee Johnson only played 50% of the snaps against the Texans. Jalen Watson took 60. And I think that is going to be a big point for the Kansas City Chiefs defense. Like Matt Collins if you're going to pick a guy, say, hey, if Matt Collins beats us, like he's going to be the Gabe Davis of that 13-second game where it's like, we're going to let him have 2 touchdowns. We're going to let him have 130 yards. Like just let him ball out just based off matchup. But Khalil Shakir can't beat you. And I would say Keon Coleman, you probably don't want whooping you either. Kincaid is maybe a bigger threat than Keon, but if we're picking who we're going to limit, which I'm assuming the Chiefs are going to do, as they always do, it's like, yeah, Khalil can't beat you. Kincaid can't beat you. Have Josh Allen's 2 best targets this game be Matt Collins and Dawson Knox, and you're probably going to do okay. The best part about this Bills offense, though, and this is why we talk about getting a really effective running back all the time, or hypothetically getting rid of Isaiah Pacheco. It's like you see Josh Allen become more efficient and more effective and put the ball in less opportunistic for the defensive type situations where it's like, hey, if we can run the ball, we can put in the 6th offensive lineman. Like Josh Allen can be Josh Allen and put on the cape when he needs to, and the running game can carry us a little bit. And that's what makes this so effective, this Bills offense so effective. James Cook is incredible. Fantastic. You go down the list and it's like fantastic running back, pretty good running back, good running back. And when you put that up against a team like the Chiefs, who like to run a lot of cover 3, but who won't really want to run cover 2, which is 2 high safeties, makes it harder to pass, against a team like Josh Allen, it's like you can't do that. Oh, now, they like to play a lot on nickel and dime defense, which is you add a safety or a cornerback instead of a linebacker. Makes it harder, makes it easier to run, but harder to pass. It's like you can't do that. Now we're getting to the weaker points of your defense. And so for the Chiefs to be able to be successful, Jalen Watson, is going to have to be able to play effective, efficient football. Trent McDuffie is going to have to be the same way. And whoever your third corner is, Joshua Williams taking 0 snaps again in the Texans game. If it's going to be Najee Johnson, he has to be good. If it's going to be Chamari Connor or Chris Roland Wallace, they have to be at least good enough to stop or limit some of these guys coming out of the slot. To your point, you cannot let Najee Johnson or Chris Roland Wallace dictate this game from the slot. You can't let Khalil Shakir beat you with 150 yards. It's not going to be an effective game plan.
Well, yeah, and kind of the crazy thing about this is like the Bills are capable of winning a game where they run the ball, they run Josh Allen, and then they just pass the ball enough, right? Like there's totally a situation where they win a game like that. And to go back a little bit, so Keon Coleman, right? You talked about him. He has not been the same player since he came back from injury. Here's his last 4 game logs: 1 for 5, 1 for 5, 2 for 31, 3 for 27, 1 for 17, 1 touchdown in that span. So he came back from a wrist injury. I'm not sure if he's just not healthy or what, but he certainly has not been the same version of himself. And you know what? You brought up a great point, something that jumped out to me. Joshua Williams played 0 defensive snaps against the Texans. What the heck? That really surprises me. I expected him, like Najee Johnson, saw more defensive snaps than Joshua Williams. So he continues to be in the doghouse there. Be interesting to see if they use him a little bit more in this game where there are more options, right? Like it was basically Dalton Schultz and Nico Collins against the Texans, much more varied offense. So we've really kind of talked this a little bit. The Chiefs against the run, it's going to be huge. Right. The Chiefs stacked the box 6.9% against the Texans. So that's more than when we say stacking the box, you're going to be saying more than 7 bodies in the box. They did that 6.9% against the Texans, 19.4% against the Bills in week 11. We talked about that. They only ran that 6 offensive lineman look 8 times again, or 4 times against the Chiefs. So you can expect a lot of heavy personnel in this game. How are the Chiefs going to be able to cover Knox and Kincaid out of there? That's going to be big. We know that the Chiefs have struggled against tight ends. We saw it against Dalton Schultz. Again, I think there's a scenario where the Bills do basically what the Chiefs just did. And the Bills say, hey, we're going to win this game by running the ball and passing to the tight ends, and we'll just get enough from Shakir, Coleman, and Cooper. So this is tight. It's going to be hard for the defense. You just hope that Steve Spagnuolo's got some good stuff cooked up for this game, some looks that can really challenge them. This is a Leo Chenal game, right? Yeah, he is 100%. Like your floating defensive lineman who can get up on the line of scrimmage and push a guard back and put a tackle back. The Bills, they love to pull their tackle. Deion Dawkins, one of the best tackles in the league. He's their left tackle. By the way, the last time the Chiefs played the Bills, they didn't have their very good right tackle, Spencer Brown. So that's something else that will factor in here. That offensive line, Osiris Torres is a hoss. He's a big body. It's not going to be easy to get pressure on Josh Allen. It never is. Let's flip the side of the ball a little bit here. So now the Chiefs have the ball. So Bills pass rush is a lot less formidable than the Texans. They actually tied the Chiefs with 39 sacks on the season, but they rank 8th in the NFL in pressures. So they get pressure on the quarterback. They just don't necessarily convert those pressures to sacks. Speaking of the Chiefs and blocking, Von Miller did not play in week 11. He was suspended during that time, so he'll be back. He's definitely not Broncos or Rams version of Von Miller, but still a player that was missing. The Chiefs missed Charles Omenihu when they faced the Bills in week 11, so there's something to put on the Chiefs column there. But what are some factors that you think are really big for when the Chiefs have the ball on offense?
They have to be effective with the wide receivers. And I'm not talking about Travis Kelce, who's basically a wide receiver. I'm talking about the actual wide receivers. If you go back and you look at that game that the Chiefs played against the Bills, again, major cast differences here. So take this with kind of a grain of salt. They held the Bills to exactly what they wanted to hold the Bills to, like 3.4 yards per carry in the rushing game. Josh Allen had 262 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Limiting Josh Allen, limiting the running game. The problem is you look at the other side of the ball, and Xavier Worthy is your leading receiver with 61 yards. DeAndre Hopkins, this is after the DeAndre Hopkins trade, remember, 3 catches, 29 yards. Noah Gray led the game with 2 touchdowns. Okay, this is not an offense that we can see do that exact same thing and have success, especially when Patrick Mahomes throws 2 interceptions, which is what happened last game. So have to be efficient, have to be effective. This is absolutely a Bills defense that can be had, but you cannot. I'm telling you, and part of this was probably just because, well, there might be a few reasons, and maybe that's a good question to ask you, but Travis Kelce was the focal point of the offense against the Texans. It's undisputed. All the targets went to Travis Kelce. Is part of that because Patrick Mahomes didn't feel like he could rely on the outside, or he felt like the pressure wasn't going to hold up? Travis Kelce was going to be available? Partially. Is it also probably some of it might be the last dance, and Travis Kelce's the guy, and if we're going to break all these records together and go down in a blaze of glory, it might as well be together. And he's forcing targets to him.
To me, this is just a scheme thing, right? You've got a team that its weakest spots are the spine of the defense. Al-Shaair isn't exactly a great coverage backer. He can fall for some of the eye candy that a guy like Andy Reid can put out there. They were down their 2 starting safeties. You've got a great pass rush and 2 good corners with Lassiter and an all-pro and Derek Stingley. So to me, this is just like, we're going to go the path of least resistance and win here. I don't think like DeAndre Hopkins still didn't take a huge share of the snaps. We thought we might see a huge healthy share of him. We did not. They targeted him once, and that target was off target. Hollywood Brown had a great almost catch. He almost went on that wheel route in the red zone in that first possession where the Chiefs get the ball right after the big kick return. But yeah, you're exactly right. The Chiefs cannot win this game without more from their wide receivers. This was kind of the Bills' first game against, or the Chiefs' first game against the Bills was kind of the Xavier Worthy breakout game. He had a lot of big plays down the field, winning as a receiver. Honestly, since Hollywood Brown has come back, we've seen the Chiefs use Xavier Worthy more and more gadgety again. Speaking of that, McCole Hardman's window to be activated is getting ready to close here. In fact, by the time this podcast posts, they may or may not have activated him. That's something to watch too. I know that they've liked what they've seen from Emigio in the return game. I think he does bring a little bit more than McCole Hardman there, but maybe they consider activating Hardman for some of those sweeps, for some of that. Just get more speed on the field. The Bills secondary, their best coverage player is Terrell Bernard. Really good, or not Terrell Bernard. Sorry. Give me a second. Corner.
Matt Milano? You talking about linebacker?
No, Matt Milano's the linebacker. They've got I'll get to it in a second, but they have some really good players in the secondary, and it's just going to be important for them to really maximize their passing game. Teron Johnson, that's what it is. Teron Johnson's a really good corner. That's their strength there. Their pass rush, Greg Russo has a knack for making splash plays, especially in the run game. He's made some big plays in the run game or in the screen game against the Chiefs. He had an interception in Arrowhead last year. It's going to be tough. One thing that I come back to, when the Chiefs went into Buffalo, they were a team that ran the ball well. And that's not really the case anymore. The Chiefs' run game has taken a step back over the last couple of weeks, whether that be wear and tear or whether that be the change in personnel with Caliendo going in for Tooney. But the Bills are a team that can be had on the run. They obviously knew that they had to stop the run against the Ravens, but we also saw a drive in the second half where the Ravens just stuffed the ball down the Bills' throat. And I remember I was watching this game and I was saying, hey, like, if the Ravens pass the ball, they're making a mistake because that was dominant. And I thought that was the turning point in that game. Credit to the Bills for getting themselves back off the mat there, and credit Mark Andrews for letting them get back off the mat. But, I mean, the Chiefs are going to have to be able to run the ball at a more effective rate than what they have. And I think we all see that Kareem Hunt's the most effective back. I would like to see a little bit more Samaje Perine too. I'm not saying to nix Isaiah Pacheco from the rotation, but the Chiefs are going to have to run the ball effectively in this game because I don't think that they can live in this pass-only world, especially with things a little bit harder on Travis Kelce because Matt Milano's back.
Well, yeah, and I think that if you're going to rely on the receiving and the passing option, the offense, DeAndre Hopkins can't have 32% of the snaps. Like, Juju Smith-Schuster cannot be out-snapping DeAndre Hopkins. I think you could say the same thing about Justin Watson, who received, like, what was it, like 8% of the snaps, like really took a big tick down in his workload. Like, if you're bringing McCole Hardman back, like, he can't out-snap Juju Smith-Schuster and DeAndre Hopkins on offense. I also think the play calling was a little bit suspect in that Texans game as well. a lot of people point to like that kick return, putting them in the red zone. And it's like, oh man, the Chiefs didn't know what to do when they got in the red zone that early. It's like, no, the greatest offensive mind knew what needed to be done. They just weren't effective. That to me was a nonsensical argument. I mean, it's the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce. They wanted to score and they just didn't have the chops. That to me doesn't make any sense. So better play calling, I think, also has to be a major part of this offense for it to be effective.
Yeah, and I mean this is the game, right? Like if you're a person who believes that Andy Reid's holding plays back or whatever, it's time to put the rounds in the chamber and empty them. That, you know, those gotcha moments that they have on third and fourth down or in the red zone, it's time for those moments to come out, because this is every bit as hard as the Super Bowl could be, or maybe even harder. Something else I want to bring up, the Bills, they don't blitz a lot, right? They're one of the lowest pressure, or they have one of the highest pressure rates in the NFL, despite blitzing at one of the lowest rates. The Chiefs blitzed Josh Allen quite a bit in the last matchup, and Josh Allen, like he does, carved it up. It'll be interesting to see if the Chiefs can get a little bit more pressure with their front four, maybe drop some more guys back into coverage. They're obviously going to have to play zone. If you play man against a guy like Josh Allen, that's how you get killed. See the Lions game where they decided to do their sticky man coverage that they did. One other thing that I want to bring up, the interior of the offensive line. If you go back and look at the PFF grades, they did not grade out well against the Texans. Danico Autry is a good interior defensive lineman. I think that he had some success. Tim Settle had some success. They're facing against a pretty good interior defensive line here. Ed Oliver's obviously the headliner, but when you see a little bit more from Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey graded out pretty well. Obviously, we want to see more out of Caliendo. Those guys, they have to be the foundation of this, right? Like if you're going to do what you're going to do with Joe Thuney and with Jawan Taylor, who played pretty well, they've got to be the steady foundation for this offensive line. They've got to be winning in the interior part.
So if you were to script this game, right, like Price gets to dictate everything that happens, how does the game look? If you're the Chiefs on offense, what's your main priority? Pick one thing and then something you can do to counter it.
Honestly, man, this might be one of the few games that might not be the worst thing ever for the Chiefs to get the ball first. I usually like the team to defer, but if they get an opportunity to get the ball first, go down, punch it in, get 7, and then if they can stop the Bills somehow, whether it be, you know, they get them a 3 and out, or they get a sack or a penalty or something, and then they get more points. Like if we're talking 10-0, 14-0, I think then you can really start to mitigate some of that run game that they have. And then you start getting Josh Allen chasing points. Maybe that's where he makes a turnover. This team, the Bills team, that can absolutely come down from 14-0, right? Completely possible. But I think that takes away some of their options and could force some of those errors that we've seen from Sean McDermott, where, you know, we're doing some silly stuff that we shouldn't be doing, right? Whether going for a third down that they shouldn't or whatever. I just think that getting them off of their platform, that they like to win games, their script, that could really help. And also, again, the Bills, they love to drop back and play that soft coverage. Maybe that creates a scenario where the Chiefs can run the ball really well against this team that wants to play off and play too high and let the game come to them. So getting out to lead, I think, will be huge here. Obviously, we want to limit the turnovers. That's kind of a duh thing. And then, again, the Chiefs cannot afford any sort of extraneous errors, whether that be fumbles, turnovers, missed kicks. Like, you need to be great in your execution in all those areas. They can't let up a big return like the Texans did. So that would probably be my number one. Obviously, the game plan is not to go into overtime and win a coin flip, which isn't a thing anymore in overtime as far as winning the game goes. But would we be surprised if that's the outcome?
Oh, yeah, not at all. And I agree 100%. Like the best way to beat the Bills, I think at this point, get off to a fast start, get an early lead. And an important thing to remember here, too, like low key, Sean McDermott's on the hot seat. Like this could absolutely be a game where, hey, we're facing the Chiefs again. It's the playoffs. We need Sean McDermott to be dialing stuff up. And the Chiefs get out to an early lead. It's like, man, what happened to Sean McDermott's defense? Now Josh Allen has to be Patrick Mahomes without a Travis Kelce. And then you go, okay, is he up to the task? Maybe. We've seen him do it in the past, but like even Patrick Mahomes isn't Patrick Mahomes every single game. There are absolutely games where he does not play his best football. Put Josh Allen in that position where he has to come back with limited weapons like Patrick Mahomes has had to do last year and say, okay, people saying you're the best quarterback in the league. Do what Patrick Mahomes did against the vaunted Chiefs defense, with a head coach who isn't as good as Andy Reid, with weapons who aren't as good as Patrick Mahomes' weapons, and beat us. And I think if you do that, you're in a really, really good spot. I think Josh Allen might turn back the clock, start making some bad turnovers. Sean McDermott gets a little tight, like you said, make some of those bad decisions, and then Chiefs are on to a third consecutive Super Bowl. That's got to be the game plan.
Before we get to our game predictions, just want to remind you all something. Just remember to enjoy this, to have fun, to relax, to soak it up. You've got the Chiefs are one of the last 4 teams in the NFL playing. They're one of the best teams in the NFL. Nobody can debate that. They've been the best team in the NFL over the last 5 years. Nobody can debate that. And win or lose on Sunday, this is a part of the ride. And I know that so many of us get so caught up in the three-peat. And yes, that will become a bigger and bigger story the closer and closer the Chiefs get to completing that journey. But you also got to remember that they've already clinched the back-to-back. Patrick Mahomes has already won 3 Super Bowls and been to 4. No one is going to call him a failure if they lose this game. No one's going to say that they choke or that they're, frauds. Right now, Patrick Mahomes is definitively number 3 or number 2 all time in quarterback play. Like, there's a lot of cash already in the bank. So just enjoy this. Like, don't get so tight. Don't get so upset. I promise if they don't three-peat, it's not all a disaster, right? They've proven that they're a good team. They didn't lose some embarrassing wild card or divisional round game. They won the division. They've already got a lot of equity. So just relax, take a deep breath, and try to remember, if we're talking about them losing, this is a great team. Teams like the Bills, quarterbacks like Josh Allen, they don't get locked out of the Super Bowl for this long. It's just super uncommon, right? We saw Peyton Manning take a while to break through. He probably will break through at some point. It's just the reality. And quite frankly, it's a compliment to the Chiefs at how long they've kept this guy down and other great quarterbacks in the AFC. But enjoy it. Relax, take a breath. Try to just remember these are the good old days.
Something I always think back to is, I saw this recently. 7 straight AFC Championship games. Could you imagine saying that 10 years ago?
No, yeah. Like, no. I was telling my wife, like, I remember the first time the Chiefs hosted the AFC Championship game in 2018, it was like a buzz around town. The extra media in town, they had to move the conferences, the media availability to the bigger conference room at the facility and everything. Like, yeah, it's just it used to be radical to even think about the Chiefs could be hosting this. Keep in mind, the Chiefs had never won the trophy with their owner, their founder's name on it. There wasn't a Lamar Hunt trophy in Arrowhead. Now there's 4 of them. That's remarkable. So another chance to add another one to the trophy shelf. Real quick before we get out of here, Christian, this is a big game, so we're going to need a prediction. What's your final score? How do you think this game plays out?
I think it's going to be a lot of people are going to pick a really high scoring, like 36-30 game, something insane where it's less than a touchdown, maybe a 3-point game, but it's all in the 30s. Like, this to me is a classic, beat them by 1 possession, limit mistakes, really, really take as much time as you possibly can off the clock, like 5 possessions each type of game. And if that's going to happen and the Chiefs are going to win, I think it's got to be like a 23-20 game. And maybe there's a last-second touchdown. I'm going to amend that just a little bit. I think it's going to be 27-20. 27-20. I think a last-second touchdown is what it's going to take for one of these teams to win. I'm betting it's the Chiefs. But again, this is a very, very – these are two teams that are so close together as far as how good they are, their quarterbacks. It would not surprise me if it went lower than that or it went higher than that. Just to hedge my bets a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, I honestly, this game is a total coin flip. Like, I can see every outcome in the cards. I can see a Chiefs blowout. I can see a Bills blowout. I can see a tight win either way. What I will say here is when the margins are this close, I'm just going to rely on pedigree, in coaching, in which case I think both of those things are a slight lean to the Chiefs. We've seen Sean McDermott, we've seen Josh Allen, we've seen this Bills team make mistakes in the critical moments, and we've seen the Chiefs be able to execute in those critical moments. I don't know what that moment will be, whether it be special teams, defense, a fourth down stop, something like that. But I expect it to be tight. I expect it to be moderate scoring. And I can't pick this game more than a 1-point game or a one possession game, right? So I'll take the Chiefs 26-24 in a game that is back and forth, momentum, big blows, big turnovers on defense, all the things, right? And really, I'm just going to come down to the fact that I think the Chiefs are playing with house money in this game. The Bills, they're playing to exercise some demons. There's a narrative forming around them. If the Chiefs lose this game, in my opinion, I don't feel like there's a lot lost. Obviously, they want to win. Obviously, don't want to lose. But I feel like if there's one team that's got the burden in this game, it's the Bills. So I'm just going to go with what we've seen in the past. And until I'm proven wrong, that's what I'll do. So, well, guys, this has been a great episode. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to our awesome producer, Richard, who always does a great job for us. Thank you, Christian, for joining me. And let's celebrate. Let's hope that we're celebrating on Sunday. Lock in here on Arrowhead Addict for all things Chiefs on game day. Until then, as always, it is Go Chiefs.